So histograms look like bar graphs, except that their bars have to touch. The reason that the bars touch is because the data, it goes from, like in this case, it starts at 60 and goes up to 159. And so we decide how to break up the data using intervals in our frequency table, but the data actually is continuous. So when you look at the bottom of the bars, here, they're actually numbers. They're ranges of numbers. Does everybody see the ranges of numbers at the bottom there? At the bottom of each bar? If this was a bar graph, instead of having ranges of numbers, we'd have words like yellow or goldfish or something like that that we measure, right? Instead, we have a range of numbers. And the bars touch each other because we can break these ranges up however we want. It's a continuous amount of data. So in this particular example, it's the weight of pounds in 7th graders. And so 7th graders were interviewed, and the data went from 60 pounds to 159 pounds. And we broke the data up into intervals of 10 and then counted how many people were in each interval. Now, I want you to notice with the intervals a couple of things. Notice there's 60, 69, 70, 79. It's not 60, 69, and then 70, 78. The intervals must be exactly the same in each one. And these are intervals of 10 because if you count on your fingers 60 through 69, that's actually 10 numbers, right? 60, 61, 62, all the way to 69 is actually 10 numbers. So each of these is an interval of 10. If you break your intervals up so they're not equal, then you totally mess up your histogram. That's one of the tips that we have to know. Okay, so we might want to highlight equal groups. Okay, because each of these has to be equal. And you'll be actually creating these yourself. So here's an example of a histogram. This one's not as ideal as the last one we saw. So we'll go over some more ideal ones that you would use. So here's a number of 7th graders by height. So see if you can figure out how many numbers are in each of the intervals. These are called intervals. See if you can figure out how many numbers are in each of those intervals. So when this data was collected, there were 3 people that had a height between 48 and 52 inches, and 5 people that were between 53 and 57 inches. Notice that the frequency, which is the number of 7th graders, is how we label the vertical axis. That's known as the y-axis or the dependent axis. So let's write that down. This is the dependent. And then the axis at the bottom is the independent axis. So this is where our intervals are. So the number of students is dependent on what what height you're looking at. So the number of students is dependent upon what height you were looking at. That's why the vertical axis is the dependent axis, and the horizontal axis, the one at the bottom, is the independent axis. Because the height doesn't depend on anything, but how many students there are depends on the height. All right, let's go to the next example. So here's an example of a frequency table with the tally marks like I was describing. And this is actually a bad frequency table. And what's bad about this frequency table is you cannot repeat numbers from one interval to the next. And here they're repeating 20 in the first 2 intervals, they're repeating 40 in the next 2, etc. So this is actually bad. You cannot repeat numbers. In different intervals. And if we go down to the next one, just another example. And now we're going to actually create a histogram together. So what we're going to do is first create a frequency table. And when you create a frequency table, what you're going to want to do is draw a table like this. And we're going to do height. We'll do height and take a survey. So height and we'll do in inches. And then we'll do our tally marks. And then we'll do our frequency, which is where you add up the tally marks and write them as numbers. So we're going to survey in class real quick and fill the data in and then create a histogram from it. So these are the heights of everyone in class. The first thing we want to do is put these in order from least to greatest. So let's go ahead and do that. The next part is the hardest part of all of working with frequency tables and histograms, and that's trying to figure out how many numbers you want in each of your intervals that are going to become the bars in your frequency table, in your histogram. So first I like to look at the range. So we have a range of 10 here. 68 minus 58 is 10. We want to have enough bars to see the spread, but not too many bars so that we see too many details. We want the overview with just enough details. So I would probably break these up into groups of 2 or 3. What would y'all like to do, 2 or 3? Raise your hand if you want to do 2. 3. Both are fine. It's not an exact science. Okay, so let's do 3. So then we'll do 58 through 60. Make sure you don't repeat the 60 in the next interval. So we have to go with 61. So 61 through 63, 64 through 66, 67, and even though we don't go up to 69 in our data, we have to put through 69 in order to keep all of our intervals equal. So the intervals have to be equal. And notice if we subtract, they all give us 2, but that means there's actually 3 numbers in each of those intervals. Now the tallies is where we tally them up. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's how you do 5 tallies. And then for frequency, we put the number 5. For 61 through 63, we have 6. Put a 6. 64 through 66, we have 1, 2, 3. And 67 through 69, we have 2. And it's a good idea to add all these numbers up and double check that you have all your data included. So that's 11 and 3 is 14 plus 2 is 16. So we have a total of 16. And then we double check our data. And you double check it with the original data, not with the ones you put in order. That way you can catch if you lost some data or added some. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. I have all my data. So now we're going to take this and turn this into a histogram. So the way we're going to do that, a histogram has a y-axis or dependent axis, and then an independent or x-axis. So we can start by creating that, and this will be a little sloppy because we're doing it by hand, but that's okay. Now the histogram, we're going to break up the bars. So I'm just going to come over here and I'm going to do 58 through 60 here, and then 61 through 63 here, 64 through 66 here, and 67 through 69 here. And it doesn't look beautiful, but that's okay. We're just doing it by hand. And then we're going to label this height in inches. Then for the dependent axis or vertical axis, that's our frequency. So we need to go up to 6. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and label it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then the label here is going to be number of students. And last, you just put your bars in. So for 58 through 60, that bar is going to go up to 5, and I let it touch the axis. 61 through 63 goes up to 6, and our bars touch with a histogram. 64 through 66 goes up to 3. 67 through 69 goes up to 2. And we're done. Oh, we need a title. This is height of students. The title is always the label of the two axes put together. So one axis was height, the other was number of students, so it's height of students. You put that together for your title. And that's how you create a histogram from scratch.